Hello! In previous episodes, we've been talking about how Teams increases personal and organizational productivity. Today, I'll give you an intro into a capability that touches both, and that's telephony in Microsoft Teams. We'll talk about why you should care about having telephony in Teams, the difference between a Teams call and a phone call, and scenarios you can benefit from when enabling your Teams for phone capabilities. We'll go through, number 1, the prerequisites to be able to make and receive phone calls in Teams. Number 2, how you can make a phone call using Teams. Number 3, we'll go into more advanced calling scenarios like delegation and how to share your phone line with someone else, transfers, consultative transfers, call parking, group call pickup, and then we'll go even deeper into features like auto attendance and call queues plus collaborative calling. You will find a clickable table of content in the description of this YouTube video, which you will be able to use to skip to the section that interests you the most. So why is Teams telephony important? How about the simplest scenario? You can have your company phone number with you at all times. Think of it as making your company's landline number, for instance, portable. Some people in specific roles are tied to the phone at their desk in order to be able to pick up, say, customer calls. Well, not anymore. You can have that company number moved to Teams and in your pocket with you at all time. Actually, multiple individuals can have that phone number in their pocket at the same time and answer an incoming call on that specific line. Sounds interesting? Okay, what do you need in order for this to work? First, each user that should have phone capabilities in Teams needs to have a Teams phone system license assigned. This license gives you the management features, the call management features, without the hassle of setting up or managing an on-premises infrastructure. Then you will need to decide how you want to connect Teams to the telephony network. You have two options, either direct routing or calling plans. For direct routing, you will need a device. That device is called a Session Border Controller, SBC, to broker the connection between your telephony provider and the Teams phone system. There's a list of certified SBCs on AKMS/SBCs. Some of these SBCs can also be survivable branch appliances. What this means is that if your internet connection fails, you will still have phone functionality that is working. Calling plans, on the other hand, don't require any SBCs or any other device for that matter. It makes Microsoft your telephony provider, effectively connecting Teams to the telephone network. You can license each user with calling plans and you're more or less ready to go. Calling plans are similar to the monthly subscription you pay for your mobile every month. There are multiple types of calling plans you can select from based on the number of minutes you need and whether the users are making domestic or international calls. It's worth mentioning that you can have a mix of the two on the same tenant. Some users have direct routing, others have calling plans, no problem. Setting them up is an entirely different discussion. In today's video, we'll assume that everything has been set up by the telco or the IT department. If you go in Teams and you can see your phone number listed under the dial pad in the calls tab, it means that the IT or telco team have done a great job. Focusing on the user experience a bit, we see a clean user interface with a large dial pad, a call history section with filtering options and a speed dial pane. The forwarding settings are accessible from this interface while allowing you to access some more advanced options. You can set up call forking, meaning that if you receive a phone call, another contact or call group will ring simultaneously with your Teams client. If the call gets picked up on one of the devices, the other ones stop ringing. Then you can configure your voicemail and the different ringtones for direct, forwarded or delegated calls. This way, you will be able to tell immediately the type of call you're getting. Okay, you might ask, why do I need calling in Teams when I carry my mobile with me at all time anyway? Well, say you're working in a department that handles customer complaints. You wouldn't want to give your phone number out to everybody to call you day and night, would you? You would rather want your customers to reach you on the work number, and when you're outside of working hours, you may choose to forward all calls to voicemail. Okay. But what if your company provides you with a mobile phone? Does Teams telephony still make sense? Well, in that case, sure, you can use your mobile phone, but the downside to it is having to carry with you two phones at all time, one for work and one for personal use. It's far better to have only one mobile phone with you and have the Teams app installed on it. If someone calls you at work, your Teams client rings on your mobile phone. Now, let's talk about some real-life usage scenarios of Teams telephony. Number 1, delegation. An example is the well-known executive assistant scenario, where the assistant makes and receives phone calls in the name of the executive. How do you set it up? The executive goes into the settings, selects the general section, scrolls down, and selects the Manage Delegates button. The executive then types the name of the delegate and then gets the option to allow or disallow making and receiving calls on his or her behalf, and whether he or she is allowed to change the delegation settings. After the settings have been applied, the delegate will have the capability to make a phone call either using their assigned phone number or on behalf of the executive. The ability to make and receive calls on behalf of the executive using the executive's phone number is called shared line appearance. Look, if the assistant makes a call on behalf of the executive, the recipient of the call will see the phone number of the executive and not the one of the assistant. That's for outbound calls. For inbound calls, if we look here, we see that the executive can set Teams to ring both his or her client and the one of the delegate, or forward all calls to the delegate. In our example, we will forward the call to the delegate. Notice that the delegate sees the call coming in being for the executive. Please know that you can have more than one delegate in an account. Let's talk about another scenario. Say I'm going on vacation. Still, customers will continue calling while I'm away, won't they? What would I do to make sure that calls aren't missed? The simplest answer is to set up forwarding, either to one user or to a phone number. But let's assume that I have more than one person standing in for me. In this case, I would create a call group. A call group is a collection of contacts that each user can create for him or herself. You can define a call group by going into the settings and selecting the drop down over here. In my example, as I'm going on vacation, I will enable forwarding and select the call group to pick up my calls. I can now define the call group by adding the members to it. Let's now make a test call. We can see that the call group members receive the call at the same time as per my settings. Speaking of forwarding, I mentioned that you can forward calls to voicemail. One thing that's interesting to note is that voicemails get recorded and then transcribed to text. We can see some example of voicemails that have been transcribed into text here in Teams. And if I open Outlook, we can see that I received an email with a voicemail attached to it and the transcribed content in its body. A third scenario I want to talk about today is consultative transfer. Say I receive a phone call and I need to transfer it to a colleague. Well, I have two options: to either transfer it directly or to first consult and only then transfer the call. While on the call, you select the three dots in the upper right corner of the window and select one of the two options. For consultative transfer, you type in the name of the person you want to send a call to, and then you can either chat with that person or have a Teams call. Once you told your colleague what the call is about, you press the transfer button and off goes the call. Notice that the person receiving the call will be able to tell that it has been transferred and who has transferred it. A fourth scenario, call parking. This is a flavor of putting calls on hold. When a call is picked up and parked, Teams generates a unique code for retrieval. In terms of real-life usage scenarios, I'm thinking, for instance, of a support representative that parks a customer call to search for an expert capable of answering a complicated question. The support representative posts the question on a Teams channel and adds the code in order for the expert to be able to pick up the call. Another scenario where call parking is useful is in a manufacturing facility or in a retail store. A receptionist parks a call for the factory worker or for the retail worker. The receptionist then uses the PA to announce the call and the call number, and the respective worker can use a Teams phone, a physical Teams phone, on the factory floor to retrieve the call. How does it work? Well, let's take a look. Here's an incoming call, which I pick up. I go on the three dots on the upper right corner and then select Park Call. Here's the code which we will now use to pick up the call, either using a soft client on our PC or on our mobile, or why not a physical phone. It works the other way around as well. We can pick up a call, park it on a physical Teams phone, get the code, and then unpark it from a soft client. Okay, it's time for a short recap. We've spoken about delegation, voicemail, group call pickup, call parking, consultative transfers. All are great features allowing you to manage your calls according to your personal needs. But let's go deeper and talk about something a bit more advanced: auto attendants and call queues. Auto attendants allow people calling your organization to navigate a menu system in order to reach the right department or the right person. Well, you know the type. Press 1 for sales, 2 for support, 3 for logistics. For Teams, these are set up in the Teams Admin Center in the Voice section. You start by defining an operator. You know that when you call into a line of a company, the menu goes like, as I said, press 1 for sales, 2 support, 3 for logistics, but if you want to speak to an operator, press 0. In Teams, the operator can be either a specific person, a phone number, or what we call a voice app. That means another auto attendant or a call queue. You continue by setting up a greeting message. You can either upload an audio file that you recorded or add a greeting message yourself. In our demo, I'll just type in a greeting message that will be read by the system. Once this is done, I can set the menu options. First, you need to set up what callers actually hear. Again, you can upload an audio file with the instructions for the caller or type in your own message. Once this is done, you set up the actual routing for the call. So first we set up what the caller hears, then the actual routing options for the caller. For us, 0 for operator. 1 is an external phone number. In my case, let's just say it's the sales department. 2 for support, which routes the caller in the call queue of our call center. And 3 for the latest news. In our case, it's a test message that I typed in. Once this is done, we can set up directory search. If dial by name is chosen and voice inputs have been enabled on the previous screen, then the caller can either speak out the name of the person they are trying to reach or enter it on the dial pad. If voice inputs are disabled, then only the dial pad option works. This means you can type the name of the person you want to call on the actual dial pad, which means for Nick, typing in the name on the dial pad would be 642. Dial by extension allows you to enter the extension number of the person you're trying to reach. But wait, there's no menu option for directory search. How do callers actually know they have the option to speak out someone's name or to type it in? Well, you need to mention it, specifically mention it in the greeting message, like I did over here. Once this is done, we move on to defining the business hours and the call flows for that interval. You can set different routing options for out of hours or for holidays. You can define the holidays in this next screen. Once the business hours, out of business hours, and holiday call flows have been defined, we go to the next page that scopes down the people you want to include in the directory search feature. You wouldn't want everyone to be able to call in, speak the name of the CEO, and have a direct line to him or her, would you? On the next page, we set up what we call the resource account for the auto attendant. This is an account that has the sign-in capability disabled and that has a phone number associated to it. You may add multiple resource accounts with different phone numbers. This translates into the fact that your auto attendant is itself associated with one or more phone numbers. Right, let's test it out. First, we'll call into the auto attendant and we will try directory search. Let's type in the name of the person we want to reach.
This is Nick's auto attendant, a demo IVR. Please select one of the options below. 1 for sales, 2 for support, 3 for the latest news. If you want to speak to an operator, press 0. If you know the name of the person you want to reach, you can say their name at any time, or use the dial pad to type in their first or last name. Transferring your call to John Smith.
Now let's call the auto attendant again. This time we want to reach the support line.
This is Nick's auto attendant, a demo IVR. Please select one of the options below. 1 for sales. 2 for support. 3 for the latest news.
Welcome to the collaborative call queue. This is a test.
You notice that when the call gets routed to the support queue, the phone of multiple people or agents rings at the same time. That's because when you press 2 in the auto attendant, it routed your call to a call queue. What's a call queue? It's basically a place where a call is held until an agent picks it up. You can set up a call queue in the Teams Admin Center. Again, in the voice section, select the call queue section and then press Add. You first assign a resource account in order to be able to have it associated with a phone number. Then, if you want agents to be able to make outbound calls using the phone number of the call queue instead of their own assigned one, you add either the same or another resource account in the calling ID section. We now continue by setting up a language for the transcription or prompts and to set a greeting. You can choose between having no greeting or uploading an audio file with one. That's what I did for my test call queue. For the music on hold, the system offers default music, or you can upload your own again. Here comes an important part when setting up call queues, the answering section. You can either add individual users and groups, or you can associate this call queue to a Teams channel. For our demo, we will show how you can add the call queue to a channel, and this is known as collaborative calling. You search for the team and then select the channel from the drop-down menu. Then you decide on enabling conference mode, which basically reduces the time it takes for a caller to get to an agent. Now, the routing method. Attendant routing means that the call rings all agents at the same time. Serial routing means that incoming calls will ring agents one by one, starting from the beginning of the agent list. Round robin means that each agent will get the same number of calls from the queue. Longest idle means that the agent that has been available for the longest will get the call. Then you can go ahead with enabling presence-based routing, which means that in order for an agent to get the call, he needs to have the status set to available. You will then decide if you want agents to opt out of taking calls. We'll take a look at that in a moment. Other settings relate to how long the line of the agent rings, the maximum number of calls in a queue, and what to do if that number is exceeded. Then the maximum waiting time and what happens to the call if that time runs out. Once we've done all this, we'll save the calling queue, and now let's go and test it out. First, remember that we added the call queue to a channel in Teams. This means that if we navigate to that channel in our Teams client, we will see that it has a calls tab. Here we notice that we have two agents logged in, Nick and John. If one of them wants to opt out from taking calls, they can switch this toggle to off. Other agents in the queue can see who is and who isn't available to take calls. Had the setting of allowing agents to opt out been set to off in the Teams Admin Center earlier, this option wouldn't be available. Now, let's say I want to call a customer. If I want to make an outbound call, I can do that either as myself or as the support line. Let's now see how it works for inbound calling. If a customer calls in, the agents receive the call on all their team clients with clear information that it's coming from the support line. If one picks up, the other clients stop ringing. The nice thing about collaborative calling is that you can have one channel with all necessary resources relevant to the call in one place. You can have tabs with your CRM or with your portal containing processes and procedures, reports, and other important resources. We've seen how call queues and auto attendants work together. Let's check a diagram on how these can be brought together to set up the routing. The diagram on this slide here shows us that we have a main phone number for our company that is being picked up by an auto attendant. It offers options to route the call in the call queues of different departments, either to sales or to support. You may have a dedicated phone number for support, which lands you in a different auto attendant. The support auto attendant can route you to the same support call queue, which is also connected to the main auto attendant. Okay, so today we've scratched the surface on what it means to have teams enabled with telephony. We saw ways of managing our individual calls according to our needs, and we looked at ways to set up auto attendants that route customers to the right departments in our company. We saw how call queues can be used in each department to manage incoming calls, and how they can be attached to channels for collaborative calling. Again, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Let me know in the comments of what other scenarios you are thinking of, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye!